So we're gonna do a little thing on technology in youth ministry, and we're gonna phrase it in the sense of 10 commandments. But wait, we might get more than that. So that was, of course, the old method of communication. Well, this will be the new method, but right at the start, and I will put the slide back at the end. That's my email address, tech@nfcym.org, because Baumgarten is too hard to spell for most people. So tech, T-E-C-H, @nfcym.org. And if you use that URL, the website, nfcym.org/Villanova_2014-1014, today's date, .pdf, that's the PDF of the slides here. Nope, I got mine plugged in. So feel free to download, and if that doesn't for some reason work or something, just email me. Everybody know what the NFCYM is, who we are? Anybody been to the NCYC, the National Catholic Youth Conference? It's a little thing with 25,000 kids every couple of years. Welcome, and you survived, great. Anyone been to the NCCYM, our adult conference, every couple of years? Yes, all right, oh, I'll give you a prize just for that. We're going to be again in San Antonio this December. Okay, get a look a little bit at our generational thing. How did you first hear the music? In other words, music, the music you like, the music you live by. I live by music. Bruce Springsteen. There's my Jesuit heritage. There's Bruce Springsteen, which is also my faith heritage. How many people remember these and heard music on that? I know, they're coming back. Okay, anyone remember these? Anyone not know what that is? Don't have to admit it, 8-track, yeah. Remember cassettes, first heard? How many people first heard music on a CD? The digital age.
I'm not that young. I look it, but I'm not that young.
And then, of course, we've got the most recent incarnation, digital music, completely upended the entire way of the music business, slowly bankrupting, but again, probably the fault of the music companies for not seeing ahead. Who among you are, and this is now we get to the technology world, the early adopters or geek gods? Who anyone here who likes to, lives the digital life, gets onto it real quick? Yes, the geek people, okay? Just basic users, power users. You pick up things, as needed, you got to use the computer at work, okay? Anybody the redeemed through suffering? You use it because you have to, but learning is hard, takes time. Okay, granted, okay. Now, in your youth ministries or ministries, let's concentrate for a second on social media. How many have a personal Facebook page? Okay, I do. I don't know when the last time is I've actually visited it. I don't even know what's on there. As weird as it is, I don't spend any time on Facebook. How many have a Facebook page for your youth ministry program? Okay. A parish Facebook page. Does the parish have its own Facebook page? Okay. After listening to Steve, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of movement on that. A Twitter account. Anyone on the Twitters? Okay. Use the Twitter account. Okay. A parish or youth ministry YouTube channel. Cool. A lot of stuff going on there. If you go to youtube.com/NFCYM, you have our YouTube channel, and we have been successively over the years adding more and more in video to promote the conferences and everything, and it's huge. Aside from the fact that we're also taking more video at the conferences so we can actually make nice videos. We're getting some folks to do that kind of promotional work for us. At the same time, anybody with an iPhone can be doing some things in the programs that are going up and going on in the parish. Okay, real quick, for fun and prizes. First hand up, when was the internet created and by whom? Not Al Gore. Okay. Anyone about when the internet was created? Decades. 50s, 90s, 60s, 80s. The internet. The internet was created in 1969. DARPA's ARPANET went online. DARPA is a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It's an arm of the military and the government that was basically trying to create networks that would survive a nuclear war, and began to give birth to ways to internetwork different networks. The primary credit goes to this man, Vint Cerf. Vint Cerf co-designed with Robert E. Kahn TCP/IP. Anybody know what TCP/IP stands for? Transmission Control Protocol, Internet Protocol. That's the language of how internet data travels, which basically breaks things up into what's called packets and sends it around. Best example I ever heard, I still can't remember the show it was, but it was a picture of a barbershop quartet in San Francisco trying to get to New York. And they all got to the airport, and they all wound up on different flights. And they all flew around the country, got to New York, and reassembled. And that's the way data travels on the internet. Same way. Breaks into little packets, goes in different routes, whatever will get it there, and then it's reassembled back into the sentences, the words, the pictures that we do. Now, the World Wide Web, when was that created and by whom? Not giving away prizes. I'm going to have to come up with something. 80s? Okay. 70s? Okay, we deduct points for not watching the news because just a couple months ago they had the big 25th anniversary settlement. In 1989, Sir Tim Berners-Lee developed HTML. That's the protocol for distributing it on the internet. That's, he's currently the director of the WWW3. The W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. There is actually a group that kind of oversees the World Wide Web, at least in terms of the standards that it uses. And not, 1995. So I was thinking about actually the 90s when I started doing a little bit of work with thing. I was laughing, I'm thinking, Steve this morning we were looking down the road. And I was thinking, there are still parish websites that look like they did when I started doing this in 19... In fact, some of them might be the same ones that were up in the late 90s. So we do have to prioritize the work that we're working on. And if your parish's website scares people, then that might be a place to start before you can get into some Google glasses. But that's the actual design of the internet, of the World Wide Web. That was his first design. Okie dokie, we'll try as much as possible to do no geek speak. But if I fail, throw up a hand and say, what the hell did you just say? I have no idea. That was whoa. Okay, so then we'll try to get into that. So if we rewrote the 10 Commandments with new tablets, but that's got to be the world. That's just huge. But wait, you have come at the right time because we're going to do the 10 Commandments times 2. Yes, you're going to get 20 commandments today. We're going to do principles and practices. We're going to kind of divide things up a little bit. So 10 principles and then 10 practices. Nice and quick and everything with that. First one, it's not if, but when and how well. As many of you know, this is not a question of whether we're going to be using technology for ministry. It's have you started? If not, how you planning? If not, how well? Anyone ever see this stuff from Eric Qualman? He does these things on videos on the internet about statistics and things. So I'm going to jump out and I'm going to put up this little video. He updates them each year. So this was the 2014 one. That's a nice quickie way of jumping into some of the stats and everything. Again, probably nothing that you don't have a sense about, but there's businesses out there who haven't grasped this stuff, and think of where the church is, of course, with that. So, go on. So that's one. It's the reality. Thou shalt not put thy cart before thy horse. I think that's in Leviticus or something, I think. This is, and you may already say, oh, what happened to youth ministry stuff? Where's all the kids stuff he's doing? And this is intentional. I think that sometimes we are so quick to jump in to every little thing that comes along, which this is technology, folks. Whatever you jump into, you're going to have to change in 6 months. That sometimes we don't take the necessary ground steps, the necessary foundational steps. And this is probably the most important one of all. These commandments are in no particular order. What do I mean by cart before the horse? By cart before the horse, I mean that the cart here are tools. These are tools, websites, webinars, videos, social media. All this technology is tools. And if our concentration, if our eyes are just on the tools, and not on the purposes or the goals that we're trying to accomplish, then we got something messed up. We've got to pay attention first and foremost to what we're trying to accomplish. And if we don't know that, technology is not the place to start. So, you know, if you're not familiar, of course, with the bishop's document, renewing the vision of youth ministry, you know, and have a team of folks that are working on youth ministry in the parish. That needs to be the cornerstone. We need to be talking about what youth ministry is. We need to be talking about then what its goals are and purposes are in this local community, and then maybe some of the things that we want to accomplish to meet those goals. So we might be trying to do communications, etc. So, you know, we'd line up some of those things, and this is like in a given parish, say, you know, there's tons of things, communications, marketing, kinds of things that Steve was even mentioning there. Catechesis, evangelization, lots and lots of stuff. And what are the technology tools that will accomplish that? There's tons of stuff out there. We've got to match up the best ones. And we've got to match them up with the antenna up. We've got to do it intelligently. Not only what's the tool that's going to best accomplish that, but also what fits in our local setting, what fits financially, what fits with our people and our personnel. If we don't have the people that are going to help and assist in this and support this, again, why start it and everything? If it's gonna die in 3 months, or because there's only one person doing it, and as soon as they burn out, you know, when I started in youth ministry, 30 years ago, whatever, you know, it was like the average life of a youth minister was 18 months to 2 years, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. So we've got to be looking again at some of those goals. And I think even go back further. Go back to the ultimate mission. You know, we have a mission. Or great phrase one time is, does a church have a mission or does a mission have a church? I mean, really it starts with the mission. The kingdom of God, the reign of God as Jesus proclaimed it. That's what we're about, and then we're going to make that kingdom real in our little part of the vineyard, and which means we're involved in ministries. Lots of different ministries in the church. I think these are probably the ones that are most adept to some of the communications technology. Communications, evangelization, teaching. We got to reclaim. Maybe you saw that with Vince Cerf's bio there and everything. What's one of the most popular job titles in the technology field? Evangelist. I want my word back. They stole it. I want it back. Okay? Why aren't we evangelists? And I want to be evangelist in the fullest sense of the world in a technological age. I want to be evangelist of the good news of Jesus, and I want to be evangelist of the ways that we can go about doing it. Those who are like, oh, I'm from the traditional church. I'm from the traditional church too, first century. So, the earliest church called it communio or koinonia, ministry of community, kerygma, evangelization or didache, the teaching of the church. Some of the best ministries. So, we have to remember this is what we're working with in service to those things. So, I know that sounds the most basic, but it's ironic how many places, just skip over that. And it's exciting, it's cool. I loved listening to Steve. I mean, that's kind of great. Now I have to sit back and say, but what is my community going to do in the next 6 months to a year or so and work that? By the way, that's probably a good perspective, 6 months, a year, 2 years. If anybody's still out there doing strategic plans of 5 years, get a new consultant, okay? 5 years? Think back 5 years. Was Twitter a factor 5 years ago? The kind of digital video that's going, it's just amazing. So, it's a long-standing tradition in the church. Maybe a little too long, but not that long. I have a friend who has sent that to me because I'm a Microsoft person, despite what Steve says. It's because I work for the church, I can't afford Apple, and B, I run a network and I have to keep consistent. I can't do multiple supports anyway. But she was a big Apple fan, so she always sent that to me and everything. So I show that in honor of her, and then I tried to remind her. But in our tradition, wasn't this a symbol of how sin entered the world? Just wondering. Tools. Okay.
Who took the bite out of the apple?
Steve Jobs. Social media, digital life is now a mobile reality. Going to bounce out again. To pardon me for one more second. We'll do another little video. There's only about 1 or 2 overlaps to the last one, but and it's about a year old now. But Qualman put together, he called those other ones socialnomics. He put together Mobilenomics to highlight this reality. And everything, as Steve said this morning, is absolutely on target. Computing is a mobile reality. The internet is a mobile reality. And again, how are we embracing that mobile reality? So here's a good shot at some of that. mostly saying K.
That's terrible.
Yes, it is. I want to concretize this for a second on something, just one aspect of this, because there's some tons and tons of stuff with this. But anyone ever heard the term responsive web design? God bless you. I'll give you a prize just for that. My boss loves responsive web design. He's absolutely committed to it. Not sure he has an understanding of what it is, but he knows we're about responsive web design. So he supports me 100% in taking all our websites and redoing them to responsive web design. Responsive web design is simply a term by the geek people, the web people, to denote basically a web that is device neutral. In other words, code a single page that can be seen clearly on whatever screen. Whether it's a laptop, whether it's a 30-inch monitor, oh, it's in my office, I miss it, or 320 pixel wide phone. Majority of people access mobile. 2009, Morgan Stanley did a study estimating that it would take 5 years, about December 2014, for mobile to surpass PC desktop purchases. It happened in 2012. So, tablets, everything. Now, you see different strategies going on. Now, some people, especially amongst people who got lots of money to spend, unfortunately, I'm not one of them, but you'll see sometimes places that actually have a separate website for a mobile device. I'll say m.company.com or mobile.company.com. Responsive web design hates that. Responsive web design basically says, just do the page right. There's technologies called media queries that allow it to actually ask the browser what size it is and reformat the pages. So that's one of the things I'm doing. So again, one of the first things I'd say is, how's your parish website? Is it mobilely responsive? Is it responsive web design? Can you look at it? How many people do that? Well, I don't know. When's the last time you were ever at a shore looking for a church and trying to find mass times and everything, and you're in the car, and what do you pull out? That's sort of the majority of web search is being done on mobile. Great example, one of the best examples, just one example. American Cancer Society. We felt it was a life-saving imperative to have all our content on mobile, so they redid their website. This is a great example. This is the American Cancer Society website in desktop. This is it in mobile. It's the exact same website. It's just coded in a way that allow it to reorganize itself. Same sections, same content. It'll be a long scrolling page, but much easier to use. And by that I mean actually use it and read it on there, not those big web pages that come up on your phone and then you gotta kind of zoom in and zoom out. No, that's not responsive web design. That's zooming out a bad page. This is actually taking the exact same content. So every single thing here. And again, sometimes one of the things you do is you can use the way you do webs. Geeky people like me have to worry about that, not you. But sometimes you'll have pictures that you can put with something, but that can go away in the mobile site and everything. You boil it down to the minimum. This has actually been a salvation in one sense of a lot of people rethinking their websites. Because people used to say, well, you only need the stuff that people really need on their website. Southwest redid their website a while back for mobile. And said, well, we only really need the stuff that people need. And then people started asking, well, then what the heck's all this other cruft that you've got on the regular website? People don't need that. And so they started people looking at it with new eyes. What is it that people need on a website? Mm-hmm.
Just a quick comment. Like, I know I'm a theology master's student, and I was just trying to help with the website. But then all of a sudden, at the beginning of this year, decided to go responsive web design. And now all of the departments who were using the information for parents or people, prospective students, so now instead of seeing it, the philosophy as a library or like a bookshelf, then they had to get rid of so much content. So you have to, I guess, when you're doing it, you have to make sure whatever, what is this, how is this website going to function, who's coming to it, and what do they want to get.
Right.
But it's a sin when people invest so much content and everything, but so hopefully that can alleviate that, but.
Yep. I and a lot of times, for as long as I've been doing stuff with technology, it's always been, and people say in church, this is all well and good, but we don't have the money. The church doesn't have all this money. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Because I think, first of all, we are great at just spending money the wrong ways. And more money has been lost in the church to saving money. And, what are we going to do with the website? Mrs. Jones' nephew, he's happy to do it for us and everything. And Mrs. Jones' nephew does it. And then 2 years later, Mrs. Jones' nephew goes off to college and nobody knows how to use the website. Now it has to be redone again. And since Mrs. Jones' nephew actually was doing this back in the 1990s, and he was doing old style, and he put all his presentation code in the middle of the pages, guess what? Now the pages have to be completely redone from scratch. And all this goes on and on and on. Like I said, I don't think the people in leadership need to know how to create a website, but they need to know the right questions to ask in order. And then I think we can be extremely, extremely good stewards of the resources that we have. So, last couple pages. It's a great site. And again, a lot of it is using the accordions that expand and everything. So the content is there. It's not missing. It's just the way it's reorganized. It's not that it was designed and written for mobile. It's just good content. I love that. Another foundational principle here. Follow thy popes. It's serious business. I would submit to you, and you could easily look at this. Look on the Vatican website for World Day of Communications. Every year there is a World Day of Communications, and Vatican, the Pope, issue a statement. It's usually about a 3-page statement. And for the last 3-4 years, going back into Benedict, these have been absolutely tremendous statements. And in a way that wasn't just, there were pieces that got picked up like by the media. I think the first one that really kind of gave it attention was he said priests should be blogging. That's way back when people actually still blogging. But it was about the importance of being in this world. And I think it was it might have been the one in 2013, where it's actually an anthropology. It's a Christian anthropology. And Benedict's a good theologian for it. So it was about that virtual communities are real communities. They're authentic. It is where our people are, and then of course he always adds, and especially young people. This is must reading. And I used to have a kind of little file cabinet, and when I was doing parish youth ministry and everything, of my go-to folder whenever somebody would throw a hissy fit. Because every once in a while, someone throws a hissy fit. It's parish. If it only happens once a week, I think I was lucky. But it was always, because people are always, they're misinformed, or they only know half-truths and everything. It's like, this can't be, If Jesus knew what was going on in this parish, he'd roll over in his grave.
Wait for the laugh.
No, just letting it sink in. Because now the question was always, okay, do I deal with what's going on in the parish or the fact you're missing a core key message of the Christian tradition? Okay, all right, let's go. So it always kind of keep, this folder of stuff. And this is the kind of stuff I would keep in it now. When it someone's like, why are you wasting your time on this kind of stuff and everything? As well as the fact that back in the 90s, I used to work with the Center for Ministry Development on an early adolescent ministry project. John Roberto and Brian Reynolds, and Brian gave birth to a term at the time that was even way ahead of its time, called non-gathered ministry, which was basically, because all ministry at that point used to be gathered. You always had to have them together. And so, youth ministers would go before parish councils all the time. How many people are in your youth ministry? How many people are in a youth group? Oh, there's 10 people coming and everything. What are we paying you for? And everything. And one of the things that we started talking about in non-gathered youth ministry was, first of all, I believe every youth minister should respond to that question the same way every pastor responds to the diocese when it asks about the Catholics in the parish. How many Catholics are in that parish? He counts the number of Catholic souls within the boundaries of that parish. Not the number of people who went to church last Sunday, which is probably about 25% to 12, but the number of Catholic souls, because we are pastorally responsible for those people, even if they don't darken the doorsteps. And the same is true about youth ministry. Every young person in that parish is our responsibility. Now, they may not darken that doorstep. They may not come to the different programs you do, but these tools now have blown that concept of, and kids are being catechized, and we really won't know that. Because kids can be very inquiry on the web, and they'll go in, they'll look up stuff. Sometimes I'm a little frightened by what they find, in the name of church. Consider generations, learning styles, personality types. There's a lot of various things in it. So if maybe your key component for the technology and youth ministry program this year is going to be working with parents and families and supporting them, then think about and find out what are they on. What's the best tool to go into them? Maybe they've moved on to Facebook, which is why all the teenagers moved off, because their parents and grandparents have moved in. Flow from and lead to real life. And Steve brought this up too before. I mean, this is not to say that this takes the place of real life. It can't. We are an incarnational faith, not a digital faith. We're using a digital tool in an incarnational faith. So one of the best ways to use that tool is to kind of lead in, lead out, enhance, resource, prod, challenge. Very much like Steve mentioned with the sermons. The same thing is true for a lot of our youth ministry programming. We can be leading, do a service program, and imagine after the service program being able to link to a bunch of different resources, CRS, constant updates on their websites about varieties of different types of justice and service opportunities and studies. Thou shalt be prepared for change, change, change. This is the one, I mean, you can't get around this, and in many days, I wish it weren't true. But if you like this, if you like a job that's always new, be all that you can be. No, this is where to be, because chances are what you're all about now, you will not be about in 2 years. In fact, you may be actually actively transforming it into something else. And that's part of the reality of what we're going to be experiencing. So, like I said, Facebook, everybody had to be on Facebook. A lot of kids moved to Twitter. Now they're moving to Snapchat. Now they're moving, and I don't know what they're going to move to. If I did, I would be rich. But it's a constantly changing thing. Now, for some crazy folks like us, that's exciting. And sometimes a little scary. Thou shalt be brief, be interesting, be gone. That's it. Thou shalt not deny thy organizational identity. And depending on your diocese or local church and community and everything, you may already have some different policies and protocols with this and everything. But this is important, again, of course, to realize on a lot of different levels, and not just youth protection and abuse protection, but when you are doing youth ministry, like on social media and a web presence, say, you are not acting as a person. You are acting as an agent of the parish. Therefore, everything should work through that organizational lens. It shouldn't be your personal Facebook account. It should be the parish's. It's not your own personal, registration of the URL. It's the parish's. And this is less a factor now than it, maybe was 10 years ago. For parish I worked in Washington, one time when the web was just starting, was a great parishioner who actually got registered URL for the first parish website, trinity.org. And that worked out really great until he had a falling out with the pastor. then all of a sudden, Trinity.org did not work for Holy Trinity Parish. So we changed it to TrinityDC.org. And I made sure that we registered it in the name of the church. And that there were multiple names on in the standard registration of a URL, of a domain. There's usually an administrative contact, a technical contact, the organizational contact. You can have different names in there. So one of the first things you want to do is have those different people. On all the URLs that my organization owns, I'm listed in there as an administrative or technical contact, but my boss is listed in there also. So if something happens to me or they decide to part ways with me, then they still own that asset. It's an asset, a digital asset, but it's an asset. So that's important. But you act in that name, so therefore you need to be keeping that perspective in mind. And again, a lot of the dioceses have been working on kind of the policies and everything with that. That's why you don't want to friend individual young people, lots of stuff along that. But you're an organizational identity, and sometimes I want to mention also, sometimes this is not just about things like that youth protection, but sometimes it's about keeping that perspective and then prodding the rest of the organization. So again, maybe as you sit back and plan out the year, and maybe it's not you needing to start working digitally, but maybe your goal for the next 6 months is to try to get the rest of the parish to think through this so there could be a coordinated response. I know, you're saying, Bruce, Jesus is coming back too, huh? Right? But we live in hope. But maybe that's where things need to start. Because, believe me, if the parish could do a coordinated response, then you've got everything. And the last one, plan. This is not a case of ready, fire, aim. This is not, but it's not a case of ready, aim, because sometimes we overplan. But we just got to sit down and think a couple things through and everything. Why digital? What are we doing this for? Again, what are those purposes and goals? What are we hoping to accomplish? Who are we trying to engage? What's our measure of success? Who's going to be responsible for this? Line all this stuff up before you start. It'll make things a whole lot easier. Okay? Mid-break, and now if something becomes popular on the internet, of course, it becomes big enough to become parody. So I found that after doing the Qualman stuff, someone did this. It's a couple years old. These guys are a group out of England. They do comedy bits. Some good stuff there. Okay, so that's our principles. Now, let's think about our practicals. and this will be kind of quick. And then should be able to have some questions. Define your metrics and create a digital ROI spreadsheet. Well, that's a lot of stupid words. ROI, anyone? Return on investment. Okay. All right, finally I can give away something. You get a video. Born Identity, Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, or The Princess Bride?
Oh, I have to have the Princess Bride.
Princess Bride. Prepare to die. Okay. Have to give away prizes. Well, now they're going to listen the next time I ask a question. ROI, return on investment. Basically, is what we're doing worth the time and the effort that's going into it? And the one thing about digital work is that it can provide you very easily the clues to see that. So, for example, and many of you know this, how many of you have been into the administration panel on your Facebook page? How many of you are the administrator of your Facebook page but never been on the administrator panel? One of the things you can get to see in here is a lot of the statistics, as Steve said this morning, it's almost like the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So some are using this for evil, some are using this for good. But you want to find out what's your reach, who's looking, who's seeing, so you can get a lot of these statistics and constantly drill down on a lot of stuff, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or the different things, age, sex, tons of stuff. So you want to decide a little bit, how many, what are the goals, what are you trying to aim for? It's going to be different for each person, each parish. But, you want to think through, is this a strategy that's worth our time and effort? Because if it's not, it's no big deal. And I know this is a hard part in church, especially Catholic churches. Do it once, and it is sacred tradition. Okay, so, heck, my daughter, one time we tried to move the creche scene at Christmas time, and she almost went freaking nuts and everything. It's always been in this place. No, it's sacred tradition. So we have a hard time sometimes saying, well, let's do something different. But we need to do that, particularly in this field. If it's not working, fine, move on. Let's find something else. So set some of those goals and go with that. Choose your digital tools on appropriate criteria. Go back to those other things. Personalities, ages, types, whatever you want to work with that and within lines with your policies, etc. These are a couple little things, but some of this stuff I learned the hard way. Be consistent when reserving domain names and social identifiers, and sometimes this is a good way where the parish, trying to get other people in the parish to work together and everything. So, if you're getting a URL that's, St. Bernadette's, then you don't want something else that's St. Burns, St. Bees, St. Bidette's, St. Bedazzle, whatever. There's,
If you have the money, you could. Then
well, yeah, you go buy them.
It redirects to the main site.
Yes. Believe me, it's the saddest day I ever had is deciding to actually put down money to buy XXX domains. But I decided that it was worth us to do it for our main website and our NCYC website. It's a National Catholic Youth Conference, and I did not want anyone getting their hands on that. So we own it. And the funny thing is, you can actually, when you reserve it, you have two choices to reserve a domain. Reserving the domain or reserving the domain and actually using it. So they actually put it out there intending people to reserve them but never use them. It's wonderful to have the money and just collect things. But as much as possible, especially when funds are limited, try to be consistent in the names. If the @Twitter on Twitter identity can match a little bit the Facebook identity, et cetera, it just helps people a lot. Particularly if it's the kind of name that tends to get completely screwed up and thrown about like Baumgarten. Something real simple, like on a Facebook, use a square version of your organization's logo as your avatar, and use the colors, match the colors. Do something, it's just, I know it might be a pet peeve and everything, but it's like every time I see a photo that somebody went and scaled non-proportionally, which means, ooh, we wanted to make that stretch. Okay, but why does everybody look like Barney Rubble? It's just unprofessional. Right? So get the original image files of the logo and everything. Work with it. If you can't, find a teenager. I'm sure they can. They'll be able to work and use something so that it looks right. Change those things from time to time. One of the things we did this year for our National Catholic Youth Conference was we do a little promo kit each year to kind of help parishes and dioceses do the promotions for it. So we actually created some graphics for people specifically of the size to use on their Facebook homepage image and their Twitter homepage image and everything, so that they could put it up there, and it kind of helps promote the NCYC coming up. So you could do stuff like that, but keep, again, consistency. Use the colors. Save usernames and passwords in a secure place. Okay? Don't answer this, but where are your usernames and passwords? Who else has access to your usernames and passwords? This is sometimes we call it the hit by the bus rule. I call it now the cardiac rule, because 2 years ago I had double bypass. And so it was like a great opportunity for NFCYM to relook at all their technology perspective and see where everything was, because if Bruce was not going to be around, was everybody going to be able to get into everything? I mean, and yes, it's a wonderful thing to make you feel like you've got great job security, because if you die, everything stops, but it's not really a good way to run a business or a church. So make sure that that's in a place. Make sure that other people, particularly your supervisor, people in authority, have access to that and can work with it. But you'd be surprised. I mean, people will go crazy and do every other technology thing in the world, but then, oh, what's the password? Password with a capital A. Experiment with social media dashboards. Use apps for smartphones and tablets. Things like Hootsuite. Some of these, there's more and more of these dashboard and programs coming out to help to make some of this, coordinate some of this effort, so that you can be working on multiple platforms at the same time. Obviously, if you're not using the apps on your phones or your tablets, use those. But as we said, I mean, in probably since the first time I put this up on a thing, maybe 9 months ago, already that's shifted so strongly. It is a mobile reality now. Get buy-in from executive staff. In churchy language, that means pastor or parish council or people above you. But make sure that they are at least informed. Informed, knowledgeable. That's another good reason to start with the purposes. Because they're going to understand that you're trying to reach out, or you're trying to evangelize, or you're trying to provide catechesis for, then they're going to be that you've started a Facebook account. But connect those things for them and make sure that they are well aware of what's going on. They don't need to understand the technicalities of how it works, but they need to understand where it's going and why it's going. Have more than one administrator or manager for each page or site. Those of you who have the website or the Facebook pages, how many have more than one administrator for them? God bless you. God bless you. Yes. Again, hit by a bus, coronary. Whoops. Oh, that's going to kill people on the videotape. Sorry. Have more than one administrator or manager. There we go. Follow large organizations with a mission and program similar to yours. Particularly on the internet, sometimes seems like nothing is new. I mean, everything is stolen, borrowed. But this is the way we learn. I mean, the internet was created that way. It's amazing. I'm still surprised, but maybe this will be news to some people. It was always to my wife and other folks. But on any web page, you can always right-click the web page and hit View Source, which shows you the HTML code behind the page, what actually is the web page, which has meant that since the beginning of the web, people have been able to go in and see how another web page was constructed and often steal it. Not steal it, but at least borrow and learn from it. I learned a lot of my web design that way, just by seeing how others were doing it. And that's exactly the way it was created. So a nice place to start a lot of times is take a look at other places if they're good. If the diocese has done a great job, how are they doing? Other nonprofits, youth programs, other types of organizations working with young people. See how they're working. How do they use graphics? How do they use Twitter and Facebook? Take a look at that. It's a great way to learn through some of these types of things. And last, create, adapt, and follow guidelines and policies. How many of you work with or under some type of policy statement, whether it's from the diocese or from your parish, regarding your social media activity? Excellent, excellent. And if you're not with that, then advocate for it, even if you're not the one that does it. And again, more and more resources. NFCYM had put together a recommended technology guidelines, but this actually has to be redone. But one of the things we settled on, when we worked with USCCB actually, the Bishops' Conference, on identifying three key elements: prudence, reasonableness, and transparency. So, and that was one of the things. Even the lawyers, when they're involved, were asking and everything. Is this a reasonable thing to be? Does it make sense to be involved with this? Yeah, it is. You look at where young people are. Is it a prudent use of in other words, something may have powers for good and evil, but overall, this is a right thing to do, and at this time with this population in this setting. Yeah. And is it transparent? No private chats, no private things. There's a system in place to make sure that this is clean, this is open to everything. Those are good. I would draw your attention. This is a book came out a few months back. Meredith Gould's The Social Media Gospel. Excellent, excellent resource. And especially, she has an Appendix B in here. Yes, you need a social media policy, including some examples and some links to other organizations that have some examples of stuff. Very, very, very good. Okay, so that was 20 of them. The other two books I would draw your attention to, from a woman named Heather Mansfield, Social Media for Social Good. Filled a lot of good lists in there, 11 points, 10 points, kind of stole some of that idea there. But actually, this was already a whopping, I think, 2.5 years old, maybe. And so just a few months back, she produced Mobile for Good. Same reality. It's written in a language towards general nonprofit world. Excellent, excellent, excellent things in here. So a couple things I would draw your attention to, because in an hour you can only do so much. Okay. It's not on the screen. Here's a good one. Shoot up your hand first. The typical keyboard on a computer is known as QWERTY because of the top letters. Why was it originally designed that way?
The average use of each key, of each letter in the alphabet.
Okay, now who else said? Who said typewriter? Who said typewriter originally? The typewriter, the original typewriter. When they did it in a different fashion, or like in the alphabet or something like that, they found out that people who started typing real fast, the keys would get stuck up at the top. Remember typewriters? Remember non-electric typewriters? They actually had things, and so they would get stuck. So they had to reorganize the keys in a way that they wouldn't keep getting stuck together. So it worked. So we got. All right. Paul, unrated versions, maybe a little blue. James Franco, 127 hours, if you want to see someone get their arm cut off. Breakfast Club, if you want to see how we did youth ministry in the 80s. The Great Escape, or The Bourne Identity.
Me?
Yeah,
Oh.
you got typewriter.
Oh, thank you. I'm old. I'll take The Great Escape.
Great Escape. Yeah, that's a blue read. Got it? Is that okay? There you go. Okie dokie. So, conclusion. We'll do that in a second. And that's the last question. I use this graphic a lot and everything. You hear a lot, everything about technology now. It's the cloud. It's in the cloud and everything. Does anybody know where that came from? Why do we call it the cloud?
Because all the information is broken up into, it's basically the cloud storage is composed of tiny bits of information, like a cloud is composed of tiny droplets of water.
Okay. That sounds reasonable.
Makes sense to me.
It does. It's not the one.
Somewhere out there in the sky.
Somewhere out there in the sky, right? Nobody knows what the cloud is, but it's there.
Isn't it an actual, like a reference to Christianity or even just theology of God's omnipotence in the sky and that he has all that information?
It would, in a religious context, that would work. In a Skynet context, that's scary. They're self-aware.
I guess generally wherever you are, I guess metaphorically, you look up
And the cloud is there.
and whether you're in different parts of the world, you see generally the same sky.
The internet?
Yeah.
It's funny because these things are hilarious how they kind of skip sometimes from the geek world out to the general thing. When people would do network diagrams, to diagram out a network in an office, say, or whatever, you used to have to go, to the router and the server and everything. And they always used to draw, at some point, the server is going to connect to the wider internet. And the wider internet was always just pictured as a cloud, because this was a local network diagram. You were trying to do that, but at some point, you're going up to everything else. And so they always put it up to the cloud. And so we had the cloud, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, that became the thing, and everybody else is talking about cloud, and it was an extremely geeky reference to start with. But again, and you hinted at this, it was ours, and I want it back. I set my bow in the clouds to serve as a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. The Lord preceded them in the daytimes by means of a column of cloud to show them the way. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven say to them, "Come up here." So they went up to heaven in a cloud as their enemies looked on. My favorite. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my chosen son, listen to him." Why do I like doing this business? Because when you can work in an area where you can say to your boss, "I work from the cloud," and the cloud said, "Listen to him," then you got a future in work that you're doing. So, got it, 5 minutes. What did we leave out of our 10 commandments, or questions or comments or thoughts? And thank you for actually staying awake in the heat. 'Cause I'm okay, it isn't just me, right?
I will say I have to commend you, especially on emphasizing the point of not putting the cart before the horse. I think at moments in the scramble of trying to connect, it's easy to just scramble for tools without any real planner idea, and lots of money can be foolishly spent, and resources and time wasted, without taking the time to.
Absolutely.
So thank you for emphasizing that.
Absolutely, and the time especially, yeah. Yeah. And it's and if you're a geeky person, it's okay to admit it. I love this. It took my wife years to understand that I like reading magazine. I had PC Mag when it used to be in print. Now I get Net magazine. I have to get these from England. Web Designer. These things are published in England. They don't publish them here in the United States. And I like reading that stuff because why are you always doing work? No, I like that. That's okay. I can admit that. But that's not my job. My job is first and foremost a pastoral ministry.
Is there an area to watch for what the next thing is, the best practices? Like in England, I don't know, is there groups of people over there doing something innovative with technology as far as is there a strong evangelization community since so many Europeans have fallen away from the church? I'm just curious, just anywhere, Australia, whatever, what is something happening that we don't know about with technology trying to connect to youth populations?
From the Catholic perspective, not as much that I know of. I know because we have a couple of friends, colleagues that work in Australia, some of the other places, and we always find out how much they're looking at our website and everything. So I'm like, oh, tell me how much more work I got to do on it. in most of the time, you'd probably find non-Catholic Christians maybe further ahead in some of this work. So I look to where some of that stuff is going. I just monitor and just kind of keep an eye on the tech area. Despite, I'm a Windows fan. Windows 8, I don't right now, and the reason I don't is because for one way or another, I wound up doing all of our NFCYM websites myself. Maybe I'm a control freak, I don't know. There is, well, no, I don't know names, but if you email me or something, I did do on a presentation once, I put a bunch of different slides up I called The Knowledgeable Client Asks. And I set up a bunch of questions that a knowledgeable client should ask of anybody who's maybe doing some web work for them. Because if someone says, what's responsive web design? There's the door. It's like, no, you're not for me. So I would, there's some questions like that I might ask. And everyone I go listening to and the programs I go to that feed me in this area, of course, the people that are giving those programs are the ones that probably, cost $100,000 for a website. Word of mouth is usually the biggest one.
Your local colleges, your graphic design colleges, their departments. Sometimes young people just want to get experience so they can say, I worked on such and such parish. They're building a resume, so that's a good one.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
And
it's hard to find somebody who can do the back end and be creative and artistic at the same time, because artists don't always have
you're
that.
absolutely correct, and that's been always the kind of the problem that us in nonprofits have, because in the field in general, those really have become separate career paths. There's front end, there's back end, and I can't afford it. So I'm more of a front end person, and I might need to kind of get someone who does some back end. But it is true, and sometimes they're hungry for it. I worked this summer with a girl from school that my daughter just graduated from last year, and she said working with us for the summer, she learned more than she did in 2 years, because a lot of times even the school programs are not. They're academics who are teaching it. No, nothing against academics, but they're not the folks who are in the trenches in a field that changes constantly. So they're often very hungry to work with it. Last one.
I don't know, I hope there is a website called the 99 Design. If you go on that, they provide with a lot of stuff, website design from logo to business card to ad to anything. But they work with thousands of designers that are all over the world. And you have a choice. You can look around all the design, and they are professional, young, and the price is very, very reasonable.
The other quickie thing I do is I look at other sites that I like me, a church or a nonprofit or something, and a lot of times if they had someone do it, on the bottom of the page they'll usually say website created by. I go to that website and see what they're doing and how they're doing it and everything, and a lot of times you can get some good stuff.